Philagape says, clashing translations in 1 Corinthians 7. Whom do verses 36 through 38 address? Some versions add daughters, implying fathers, but ESV, using his betrothed and his passion, seem to indicate a groom. So one thing we can learn, I'll tell you guys about this passage briefly, but one thing we can learn about translations when they disagree, not just one translation disagrees, but when you see a variety of translations, ways a verse is being handled, it's because in the original language, usually it's just hard to tell. So Peter even said, Paul writes some things that are hard to understand. This is one of those passages. So let me read it to you guys and you'll see. This 1 Corinthians 7 is instructions towards single people and married people. And in this case, the question is this part of the instruction? A father who has a daughter he's responsible for, right? And he's helping her work through whether she'll stay single or get married. Or is it a man who's engaged to a girl and they're thinking about maybe staying single, right? That they had an arranged marriage and maybe they're going to stay single. So let's read the passage. Here's how the ESV has it. If anyone thinks he's not behaving properly towards his betrothed, so it's a fiancé, if his passions are strong and it has to be, let him do as he wishes. Let them marry. It is no sin. But whoever is firmly established in his heart, being under no necessity, but having his desire under control, and has determined in his heart to keep her as his betrothed, he will do well. So he who marries his betrothed does well, and he who refrains from marriage will do even better. Either you get married and you honor God in marriage, or you stay single and you're more free to do kingdom work in the name of Christ. Okay, but here's another translation, and I don't think you mentioned the other translation you were looking at, but I think the New King James, memory serves me here. So New King James has it as if it was her father, right? So it says, but if any man thinks he's behaving improperly towards his virgin, unless I've misremembered, let's read it. So it's not betrothed here, it's virgin. So she's an unmarried woman is what it means. If she's past the flower of youth, and thus it must be, let him do what he wishes. He does not sin, let them marry. Okay, it's a little vague now. This translation keeps it slightly vague. It could be her fiance, or it could be the father who's letting them marry. It's a bit vague, probably on purpose because it's difficult to translate. Nevertheless, he who stands steadfast in his heart, having no necessity, but has power over his own will, and is so determined in his heart that he will keep his virgin, does well. So he who gives her in marriage does well, but he who does not give her in marriage does better. Now that sounds like it's talking about a father, not a fiancé. Now, here's where it gets really hard and really simple. The interpretation changes a lot, whether it's the father or the fiancé, because you just go, oh, he's talking about a different situation. But the application stays the same. This is the simple part. The application is the same. Guys, girls, if you have the self-control and will to stay single and serve the Lord in your singleness, go for it. But if you just really want to get married, you're burning in your heart with a desire to be with somebody, to be physically together, to be just around each other and married and all that, you don't sin. That's also allowed too. What's interesting about this verse is that whichever interpretation you grab, the application remains the same. The only question is, who was the in their culture, who was the one making the decisions about getting married? And that is more of a cultural reality and not something we need to stress about.